everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Bottom Line. I'm your host, Lauren Kalil. Our show is brought to you by UCAN. On today's episode, we have Morning Chalk Up's Joey Adduci and Dex Hopkins here to discuss some of the major changes made to the CrossFit Games rulebook and how it might impact the season and even some athletes. First, this is the earliest we've ever gotten the rulebook before the holidays. I think that's definitely a step in the right direction.
Yeah, for sure.
No Thanksgiving hangover.
Exactly.
How much does this help athletes kind of prepare for the season, knowing exactly what's in store before they really even end the off season?
I think it's great. I mean, even if it's bad news, I can adjust if the timeline's right. And so, I think the more things that we've talked, it's like the third episode in a row we've talked about it. So keep the ball rolling, CrossFit. Like I'd love not to just bash you on here the whole time, but yeah, I think the speed of it is catching up, and then as the structure and all those things get ironed out and the fluidity of that goes, then none of this is bad news. No matter what the actual news is, the speed of it is good for everybody.
Mm.
Yeah, the transparency and communication was one of the most criticized things in the past. So, like he's saying, even if it's bad news, they're still getting news and they know what to expect. So that's the key.
Yeah, we love to see it. Some of the major changes is what we're going to dive into now. And one of the big things that stuck out to me was residency. Athletes will establish their competitive region when they register for the Open. And this is actually based on the residency of the affiliate that they attend, not their permanent address. If you are unaffiliated, however, then your home address is your residency. Dex, does this make it easier for athletes to essentially maybe jump to a different region, or what are some of your thoughts on this new rule?
I think it's necessary, right? Like I think the worst part of the last few years, and we got the heavy dose of it with Roman this year, because he actually showed up and showed out at the games, was sweating whether or not these people are going to be able to come to the show, right? Like I don't want to have to watch you at Dubai with whoever could make it out there. I want to watch you at the show doing the show things. And so if you've made it over here, like in his case, and Dennis, tell me, I don't want to mess his last name up,
Samsonov.
fittest wizard. Like I talked to him about the same thing. Like nobody wants to sweat that. I want to sweat how I'm going to perform, how I'm going to feel, am I healthy, and all those things, not the logistics of do I live in the right place? Am I going to get exported to compete for no reason because I'm going to have to come back here to do the games anyway? So the wild card is how will that go? So I mean, I think that's great. And again, the more they mention the affiliates, like the unaffiliated thing, let me tell you what nobody wants to do after this last year, especially with like certain people making the noise they've made in the space, is submit all their videos. And if you're unaffiliated, that's what you got to do. Which I'm a fan of it. I think we're going to go to that thing, but also that's a manpower issue. But so that drives people back to the affiliate, especially for like, the weight they're putting on the stages through the open and the
Mm.
quarters with the backlog and the performance stuff. So I think it's great and necessary.
But
Yeah,
go
go
ahead,
ahead.
Joey.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I was just going to jump in and say, kind of to the point of it coming so early, is that athletes now have a little over 2 months to declare their region because they
Mhm.
don't need to lock it in until February 20th. But
Mhm.
if they need to file an exemption, they have until February 1st to do so. So having that time to kind of figure out the logistics, like you were saying, really gives them an advantage to kind of have everything settled before we start the season.
Specifically for athletes in North America, do you think that there are some who are looking at what region they're in currently and possibly reaching out to an affiliate in like the Western region to affiliate with them so they don't physically have to move, but they can
Yeah,
compete in a different region? Is that going to be a thing?
I think it like makes that easier because you look at it like say I'm a private school, high school, and we got football, right? So let's use that. If there's a public school kid that doesn't live in our, lives somewhere else, or it was public school and they have to come in and use someone else's address to say they live, that's what was going to happen. Now this makes you, is it going to be like a who can and has sponsorships to be able to
Mm.
pay for those flights to go out there and to stay? So it's just another layer of like, do you have the financial support to be able to do it and the professional part? But I don't think you're going to get away from that. It's after we move away from the actual regional format to where it's like, hey, you live in Central East, suck it, or you can sell your house and move. Uh, there's more flexibility to not have to do those things now. Like I can, hey, I live in New York, San Diego affiliate. Can I use your affiliate? Come do the open there with you guys, and you be my affiliate, so I can be in an easier region, so to speak. Um, but I also think like they've parlayed that with the ability to add spots. So I don't know if that helps or hurts
Mhm.
because if I'm a team athlete female in the West, I'm really considering like if this is my best shot to go, whether they give us extra ones or not. If it's set at 5 because they think it's trash side of the country, awesome. Then I am going to shoot my shot if it's the best shot I've ever had to qualify individual. And like, there's a lot of good females on teams in the West that people are not thinking about. And so, and they most of them go to one gym. Um, but so I mean, it frees them up to make it easier, but also it gives you like, it's going to make, I think it takes the bad taste out of people's mouth about it, all that to say. So yeah, I don't think it's bad.
Mm. So, Dex, you kind of alluded to it, talking about Dennis Samsonoff and Roman Krenikov. But another note about the change in residency is, in fact, citizenship. And that will be an athlete's primary requirement used to determine their competitive region. But they do not need to be living in the country. They claim citizenship. Joey, can you kind of explain some of these layers, how this will work, and any other specific athletes that this might impact?
Yeah, definitely. So essentially, to make it simple to understand, you're going to have to represent your country even if you live outside of that country. If you're someone like Roman, where you have, political conflicts that are going to restrict him from traveling, that's where the exemption will come in. So they can apply or file a petition for an exemption by February 1st. The only thing, the kind of caveat there is that if they are approved, they're actually going to be representing the region and the country that they're switching to. So that's kind of something that will be a change, but it does allow the flexibility, like Dex was saying, that if you do want to move to a different location, you do have that flexibility if needed.
Are there any other athletes that come to mind that might fall under this exemption rule?
I think the biggest one, like you already mentioned, was Roman. There definitely will emerge some with this being so early on, and as they evolve this system with things from the pandemic and trying to adjust for things that
Mm.
are outside of their control. This is going to be an ever evolving system. So we're
Mhm.
definitely going to see some people try to change regions for competitive advantage, but then we're also going to see people do this for things that actually allow them to compete. It's going to be something that consistently changes. It's too early on to say, but it's going to take a few years if they continue to adjust.
I
And what
think
I
there's more people than we realize. Like
mm,
Sydney Mikulichin still cannot get back in from Canada. Um, Guy was one that got shipped to Brazil
mhm.
last year. Um, so yeah, I think there's like more people that are having trouble getting back in right now. That I know Sid's trying to get back in. I assume Guy is also. But yeah, I think there's the high profile people are still going to be that, but I think there'll be more that'll apply to. It'll be interesting to see like a petition's a petition, right? They could throw that off. It'll be very kind of, I guess, subject to whoever reads it. Angel will be very busy this year sending emails of a yes or no, which she's great at her job. But yeah, that is going to be it'll be something to see.
But what I do love is how clear this section is in the rule book and
Mhm.
how it does give athletes the ability to apply for this exemption, to be placed in a different region, whether it's political issues, whether it's visa issues. I just really like the clarity that we have because I think in the past, athletes were doing this. Just speaking with some of the athlete
Mhm.
managers, we know that they were working directly with CrossFit, but laying it out here so that all the athletes know they have the ability to apply for this exemption is definitely, I think, a step in the right direction for CrossFit.
Yeah, it's definitely a little bit more of a proactive approach. So in the past, it would always be something that we would be catching up on, and they would kind of be
Mhm.
handling it on a case by case. And they've done a good job learning from that and applying it to make it more of a system that people can rely on, like you're saying. So definitely a move in the right direction.
It's way less reactive. Like, and I think that will keep the waters calm as far as like a relationship between like CrossFit, the company, and the athletes who are trying to like pursue it at that level. Yeah, that's 100% on point with that.
This episode is brought to you by UCAN. Who can? You can. At least I can with UCAN with one of their easy squeeze pouches that give me the energy I need to get through my workout without causing a crash. When I work out early in the morning but don't want to on an empty stomach because we know mid-wad I'm going to be hangry, I grab one of their super easy on the stomach bars. Chocolate almond butter? Yes, please. I may not be a games athlete yet, but UCAN helps me stay focused and energized during my workouts. It delivers steady release carbs for long-lasting energy without spiking blood sugar levels, the key to sustaining peak performance and focus and recording videos like these. Trusted by top CrossFit pros like Scott Panchik and Emily Rolfe, get your hands on these goodies and even save 20% on your first order with our code CHALKUP. Link in the description. Now, back to the episode.
And I think one of the things is obviously the structure of the season, the structure in leadership at HQ. We've seen a lot of change in the past couple of years. So maybe last year a lot of this was reactive, and they learned from the mistakes, or they learned from examples that now we can have a better system, hopefully, moving forward. One of the other big things with the rule book that I think is fascinating, and I love to see, Joey, you kind of compared it to football, but this two appeal rule, kind of like challenge flags that have arrived to
Love it.
CrossFit.
Love
The,
it.
the other day during a press conference with members from HQ, Adrian Bosman, he did emphasize that this is not in fact new, but just new to the rule book so that everybody can see the process written out, which I do appreciate because
Yeah.
it's good to see this for the sport. I'll pull it up now so that we can see exactly what we're talking about. But there are certain situations that athletes cannot appeal a no rep, essentially. So for range of motion, depth of squat, extension of hips, knees, or arms, or stabilization of a lift or equipment overhead. But there are a big list of things that people can appeal for. What are your initial thoughts, Dex, especially as an athlete, somebody who might have been in a situation like this before in the heat of a moment?
The depth of squat's a weird thing. I think every time you have to submit one, there's a certain level of anxiety that comes with that, whether you know, like, I'm a good mover. That is one of my like points of pride. No matter how slow it is, it looks great. But I'll also say, like, kind of having like a internet and see when I see your relationship with Annika Greer, like this is the Annika rule. And then they
Mm.
had another thing built in for like extension of your submission, and that's in there in pretty plain English. But it's weird to pick those things out. Depth of squat, like, I mean, I hate to beat the don't wear all black thing into the ground, but that's going to be a thing. But all those things are mechanical and visual. Like, I get it, maybe. The stabilization of a lift, that's also like depends on who watches the video, right? Like, if you're a person that says, like, you got it up there and got your feet together and then you dropped it, cool. Um, but yeah, I mean, scorecard leaderboard stuff's fine. Um, the loading now, like seeing the crazy stuff with Rogue, if they're going to go to, hey, weigh your weights, that could get pretty weird. Just all these things are like, I always equate it to like the manpower, right? Like I remember the first year they asked for videos. I know more than one athlete that sent that chipper in that had 50 wall balls in it that they did not have wall balls in the whole video, and they still accepted it. And that
Mm.
was a manpower thing then. I don't think that has gotten easier as more people do the open and more people are interested in being competitive at a higher level. And now there's another stage you have to review for, right? If we're going to do the backtracking of performances through the open and quarters, then you have to have people to watch them. And so, the more layers you add, the more pressure you put on that manpower, the more people actually have to like watch the entire video and it not be like times four. And so it's crazy to me to kind of pick things out that are, you can appeal this, but you can't appeal that. The only thing they needed to have was the extenuating circumstance extension for the rule. And then, I think that has to be kind of a fluid situation of what you're going to be able to appeal. I mean, like last year, we saw a bunch of people overhead just using quarters, overhead squats at 1 rep max. Cool. How long did I have to stand there when I stood up to call it stable and a finished lift? Right. Like some people do the 1 second. Some people, if you're a jerk like me and you want to hold it there and look around at the camera and people and drop it, cool. But it's just part of my thing and most people's thing. But
It's your
it's not.
flair.
Yeah, it's a real just arrogant thing for me. It's for me. But I yeah, it's weird. I just wish there was a, hey, submit every video. Every video's got to be public. We're gonna look at it. I don't even need to know how you're gonna do it. Just tell me you're gonna. And as it goes, let it be a conversation, not like a, hey, this sucks, toss it, explain. And it
Mm.
seems like they're on that track to explain things more, to be more thorough and clear. And I think the clearer that water is, the better for all parties involved, and they can do a better job. The athletes can feel like they have this thorough process, even if it comes out negatively for them, there's no question marks. Like last year with the Annika thing, like we've seen the kid at several competitions in the field now, looks good. If you can prove there's a extenuating circumstance, okay, nobody's got a problem with that. Now, if you just like you're a turd, you forgot, I'm like, okay. Um, but those are the things I like to see. Like hey, you had a very clear, hey, we didn't have a really process for this. Now we do. That's awesome. Uh, it's on par for the good stuff. We're keeping it rolling.
Yeah, I think to Lauren's point too, like Boz mentioned in the press conference, this was already there, but
Mm-hmm.
it's just kind of the recurring theme we're talking about today is that the cards are on the table now and transparency is increasing. And I think in context of the semifinals and the games, now we have a strategy element to it because kind of like we were talking about with challenge flags and cross in football, is that now we know, okay, you have 2 appeals for this competition. If it's early on, you might not want to burn that appeal if it's
Mm.
not really going to kill you because later on you might really need it and it might make a major decision. So there's definitely a strategy element. I like that it puts the responsibility on the athlete or team. This way it's not as subjective. So it's definitely a lot of good things. And it's fun to see that strategy. People are going to have to kind of weigh and balance the pros and cons as they go through the competitions.
Yep.
Sure.
Well, it's not the closed door, like weird back door, here's your answer, shut up thing. I think that's been the worst part about something we're trying to professionalize and do, in that realm of professionalism is like there was not a lot of answers. And so I super appreciate that. And like I love Dave and all the things Dave was character wise and what he was, but like this is a much better thing because I think they enjoyed that, right? Like close the door, we do our business, open it, tell you what's up. This is a very clear, awesome process, which is a lot like other professional sports. So
What are both of your thoughts? And maybe we'll do this as kind of a pros and cons of the structure being more consistent. We've kind of talked about a lot of the positive sides to this, but are there any things that we don't really like about the season being more consistent?
mm, not in that light. I mean, all the things athlete wise and coach wise, if there's a clear path, there are clear processes for, different circumstances, whether it's appeals or it's I don't live here, but I want to live there. And it, under the umbrella of CrossFit, as far as like, hey, the affiliates, the heart, these things are the 0.001%, and all these things kind of flow together. I mean, it looks to me like the steps are being taken to kind of, bring it back together. I think my least favorite time was when Greg was like, hey, all the competitions can suck it. You guys do your own thing, sanctionals. And I think that's a real weird rift. And then I think the product of that is now we realize, and they realize then, but now even more so, the competitive side is not what it is. Like for CrossFit, the CrossFit is the peel 100 pounds off people, get them in the affiliate, and this is pushing people back into that, whether it's one you live next to or not. If you can reach out to somebody and have that affiliate, then you have a relationship. So that's my favorite thing, and they're pushing all those things back together, and so it feels like honestly like a real healing, and getting back to like the heart of it. So that's cool to me.
Yeah, I think the biggest problem that we've seen over the last several years is that bridge between the online qualification and the games. And
Mm.
there's been so many different iterations of what should we do, and they're kind of circulating back to that regional format with keeping some of the best practices that we've kind of liked over the last several years. From a pros perspective, we're going to have consistency in programming, which is nice because everyone will be tested equally. You'll be doing the tests in the same order. Last year, some of those events had people doing the same workouts, but in different orders,
Oh,
which
Yeah.
is completely different. From a
yeah.
cons perspective, you also have to think there's so much more weight to each semifinal. So if you're sick
Mm.
or if you're battling an injury, you got to show up and you got to perform. So that definitely puts that regional pressure back into that process. But if you look at it, I think there's more pros with the new systems in place because it's going to allow people to get more qualification spots with the strength of field calculation.
Mm.
Do you think I think the continuity of programming too is going to take a lot of pressure off people to leave. Like, aside from like North America East, obviously being like female stacked, removing that, the continuity, because I mean, that was a thing last year. I want to go here because this is the style of programming. I want to not go to Granite Games,
Right,
Southside,
right.
and so, and yeah, that's literally consensus. But yeah, I think that takes a lot of pressure off that. I loved the regional format. The big part of it again was like your affiliate being able to come cheer you on because it was relatively local. It was always an easy drive. Um, but this is close. It's close. So
We're getting there. Joey, what is your bottom line to the changes of the rule book?
I think the biggest thing to take away is that there's a lot of consistency coming through this year, and the early communication is the thing we should be most excited about, not the actual changes, because, like I said, it's a young sport that's going to be consistently changing. But the fact that they are applying the things that they've learned over the last several years is a step in the right direction for the sport.
Dex, what's your bottom line?
Agree. Yeah. It's very good that what has been muddy water in the past and a constantly like just changing seems to be like the wrinkly shirt we're ironing out, and not based off like somebody's agenda to push, based on like a best practices thing like Joey said, and those things will benefit everybody involved, the people running the show, the people participating in the show, the people supporting the show, and those things will feel like more united front, and everybody's able to be involved, and there'll be less frustration. So I think these currently beautiful things, the speed of it goes in with that, and there's not been a misstep yet. So yeah, it'll be good.
Love to see the transparency and consistency, boys.
Mm.
Dex, Joey, thanks for chatting with us, and we'll see you next time.
Good day now.